Chapter 14. Operation Take Back the Ship, Phase 1. Bennie is shaking his head. That's your plan? Yeah, what's wrong with it? Will asks, opening the hatch leading out of the brig a crack to peek down the corridor. The brig is just off the crew lounge, down a short hallway, and opposite the passage to the crew's quarters. Well, for one, shoving me in the main ventilation duct is what's wrong with it. The scowl on the Braylac's face is almost comical to Will. What exactly again am I supposed to do? Maxim looks over from the opposite side of the door to Will. Make your way to the bridge and be ready. Ready for what? Gabe grabs Bennie by his jumpsuit and lifts him as Maxim answers. Anything. He motions Gabe through the hatch, closing it behind the bot and its captive Braylac. Will looks at Zephyr and Cynthia. You think you two can keep from killing each other long enough to kill bad guys? Zephyr rolls her eyes and pushes past Will, followed by Cynthia. He looks at Maxim. Ready? The big Pelorian cracks his knuckles. Hopefully whatever they were doing earlier they don't repeat. I don't like this, Bennie says, as Gabe removes the bolts holding the grate in place. The primary air handling system is served by a large conduit that runs the length of the Ghost, and has branches to serve the various sections of the ship. It's the same system that Gabe recently uninstalled the nitrazine canister from. Gabe looks down at his friend. I believe the time for objections has passed. Bennie raises a green eyebrow, or where eyebrows would be if he had them. I objected then too. Gabe shrugs and reaches down for his friend. Up you go. As Gabe resecures the bolts, he hears Bennie start working his way through the duct. Try to be as quiet as possible. I hate you guys, comes the hissed reply. The smell. Cynthia's feline nose is twitching as she inspects one of the emergency spacesuits in the small room. Blame your boyfriend. I've been trying to get him to replace or at least clean them since I first found them, Zephyr replies, holding her own suit at arm's length as she undoes the zipper on the front. Hopefully, we won't be in them very long. You said the behemoths have an atmosphere? Cynthia nods once. That's what Lorath said, yes. Apparently, part of their biological process, even in hibernation, is to produce oxygen. Zephyr sits to don her boots. They're all just dormant? How do they not wake up when the salvager's bored? Cynthia shrugs. We don't feel the germs that crawl around in and on us. From what I picked up from Lorath and Xarrix, these things have been adrift for hundreds of cycles, in some sort of standby mode. Someone must have left them here and never come back. She gestures around the room. This part of space is pretty desolate. Wardlow 3 has only been colonized for 500 cycles after all. So on top of whatever ghoulish things are being done to these creatures, we're also stealing them, Zephyr says. Standing, she sighs. Come on, let's do this. She reaches up and pulls a lever, causing a circular hatch in the ceiling to open. A smaller hatch is visible a meter above it. Then, only space beyond. Handy little place, this, Cynthia says, looking around the room they're in. Zephyr smiles, remembering when she and Maxim first met Will, dropping down into the Ghost from the Partherian warship they were being held prisoner on. It has its uses. She presses a button, and the hatch leading into the room closes. Helmets, she says, clicking her helmet into place on the neck on her suit. She presses another button and the entire room decompresses, the oxygen being sucked out. She grabs 2 small thruster packs, handing one to Cynthia. These should get us over there. After that, we'll have to figure something out. Nodding, Cynthia takes the pack and puts it on. One last button, and the outer circular hatch opens. Here we go, Zephyr says. After helping Bennie into the central atmospheric system, Gabe heads for engineering. His new sensor suite, courtesy of the mega warship Siege Perilous, provides a warning when he needs to duck out of the way. Luckily, it appears that Lorath has only a small crew with her. Approaching the door, his sensors register 3 life forms inside the engineering compartment. Reaching for the button that opens the hatch, his eyes shift from their usual yellow glow to a more menacing red. There, Cynthia says, as they approach the Behemoth. She's pointing at one of the salvager ships. They leave the ships empty. It takes all of them to finish the task. She looks around. What's all this debris? Zephyr adjusts her thrusters. Not sure. It wasn't there earlier. Must be what was causing the evasive maneuvers before. Looks like maybe one of the behemoths, Cynthia offers. Zephyr nods. Several pieces of debris as big as the ghost drifting by. They don't take security very seriously, do they? Zephyr asks, as the codebreaker software Bennie provided takes less than 2 seconds to open the outer airlock doors. Operation Take Back the Ship, Phase 2. Ready, pal? Will asks from outside the bridge. Maxim nods. Very. Will reaches down and presses a control. It beeps angrily and flashes red. She's good. He reaches down and accesses a program on his wristcom. Bennie's better. He pulls a length of wire from the wristcom, connecting it to the side of the access panel. Seconds later, the wristcom beeps, and the hatch control turns green. Putting the wires away, Will presses the button, and the hatch opens. Maxim rushes in first, followed by Will. The hatch to engineering opens, and Gabe strides in. The moment he enters, he sees 3 Braylac in orange coveralls. Hello. Without a word, and before he has a chance to act, all 3 rush the engineering bot, one leaping through the air and grappling Gabe's right arm. The other 2 tackle Gabe at the waist. Surely you do not think. One of the waist tacklers climbs up Gabe's back and produces a plasma welder. Gabe reaches back for the small attacker, but he dodges, and the one on his other arm reaches around to grab onto his shoulder joint, producing a small spanner. Oh my, Gabe says, mostly to himself, as his opponents don't seem interested in dialogue. I should have used my blasters. Do you know where we're going? Zephyr asks Cynthia, as they make their way through oddly organic corridors. They've only encountered one scavenger so far, which they had to dispatch before asking for directions. The corridors of the ship are more or less uniform in their size, tall enough for an average height being to walk in, and about 2.5 meters wide. Organic-looking light fixtures are spaced about every meter. More or less. Lorath mentioned that their brains are forward and near the center where the vessel is the widest. The corridors should work their way there, if it's that vital. Like a ship's bridge, I think. She thinks, Zephyr mumbles, just loud enough for her partner to hear. Cynthia stops and spins to face her. Okay, look, what's your problem? You have an interest in Will? Hate Tigrans? What is it? Will? What? No, I'm with Maxim. Wait, that's none of your business. My problem? She begins ticking things off on her fingers. Is that you're a criminal, an opportunist, a murderer, almost certainly an assassin. Looking down at her hands, Zephyr realizes she has one thumb left. And likely a backstabber. Cynthia starts walking again. First of all, you're no saint. You think I don't know about the body count your little merry band leaves behind? Criminals, pirates, scumbags mostly, Zephyr retorts. Secondly, you're a trained peacekeeper intelligence operative. Your mate is a heavy weapons and tactics officer. Ex-peacekeepers, Cynthia continues, as if Zephyr hadn't interrupted. And small, green, and annoying as a hacker, with warrants throughout most of the GC. So yeah, I am an assassin by training. Training that started when I was a kid, left on the street when peacekeepers killed my mother. Training that replaced an orphanage, and that replaced the likely end result of a penal colony. Or work in a pleasure house. You're damn right I'm an assassin. Or was. At the look Zephyr gives her, she adds, I got out of that business as soon as I could. That's how I found myself in Lorath's employ. As for being a backstabber, I've been loyal to every employer I've ever had. Until now. She looks at the Pelorian woman, walking beside her. What were your other super judgy points? I've forgotten. Zephyr is silent for a few beats, as they work their way through corridors. The signs of scavenger crews, growing with every step. Trash is everywhere, and several sections of the passage are cut and pried open. Finally, Zephyr inhales. I'm sorry. What's that? I didn't quite hear you, Cynthia says, slowing as they approach a wide intersection. I judged you with incomplete information, which was more or less works for Xarrix. That wasn't fair. Then you started to get close to Will, and I was worried you'd hurt him when you betrayed him. Except I didn't betray him, or you, or hurt him. I know. Zephyr turns and puts a hand on the shoulder of her feline companion. I'm sorry. Cynthia nods. Come on. I can hear the salvagers. We're close. Operation Take Back the Ship, Phase 3. I hate them, Bennie mumbles to himself as he inches his way through the primary ventilation shaft. Treated like Dren, made to crawl around in air ducts. He inches past something sticky and curses. Will and Maxim burst through the bridge hatch, catching everyone inside by surprise. Lorath is the first to react, springing from the command chair toward the front of the bridge, far from the commotion. But as she does, her foot collides with the main controls, causing her leap to be less than graceful. The ghost accelerates. The Sylvan at the weapons station lets out a rattling kind of scream, and the top of its head erupts in what looks to Will like flowers. The Trinball occupying Zephyr's station turns to the intruders and leaps right at Will, razor-sharp teeth bared. Before Will can duck, a massive fist smashes into the side of the reptilian head, causing its owner to make a gurgling sound before collapsing to the deck, dead or unconscious. The pair duck as blaster fire splashes over their heads, scorching several light fixtures and access panels. Will grabs the blaster from the fallen Trinball's holster and looks at Maxim. You take Tree Guy. Maxim nods and crawls toward his station. Will stands and fires several shots, trying to not destroy the main display. Give it up, Lorath. He grabs the Kell figurine and hurls it at her. She dodges the small blue projectile, swatting it away in midair. Are you kidding? You'll be dead in a few syntax, then your big friend will join you. Then I'll track down his mate. And that flabbin' Cynthia. I bet Zarix lets me keep this ship as my personal transport. She stands and fires twice toward Will, or at least where Will had been. Off to the side, Will can see Maxim tackle the Sylvan, which again lets out a strange rattling scream. This time, instead of its head blooming, large thorns emerge from its forearms. It swipes at the big ex-Peacekeeper, who dodges expertly, giving ground to the advancing alien. Will stands and fires just as Lorath is taking aim at Maxim. Oh no, you don't! She spins, returning her attention to Will, and returns fire. Once the four of you are dead, I'll sell that little green Krebneck to someone who needs his services. There's always someone looking to influence an election or a stock market. From above her head comes a shout. Like worrying you, Will! A grate drops from the ceiling, distracting Lorath enough that she doesn't see the small green blur shoot out of the duct. Bennie lands right on her face and starts raining blows with his small fists. Sell me! Sell me! You sleazebag lowlife! Eep! A scaled hand grabs his jumpsuit and hurls him across the bridge to collide with the central control console. His body smashes several controls. The ghost tilts wildly. Will, already standing, fires once, hitting Lorath in the shoulder. Don't make me, he begins, but as she raises her weapon to fire, he shoots her in the chest. She is sent flying against the main display screen, smearing blue blood against it. A smoking crater marks the dead center of her chest. Lorath looks up at Will. Then the life drains from her face, and she collapses. Will hears a loud crack, like someone snapping a twig, and looks at Maxim just as he drops the Sylvan to the deck. Cuts crisscross his arms and face, almost all of them bleeding. The big man shrugs. Sorry, we didn't need prisoners, did we? Will shrugs back. Bodies are easier to get rid of. He looks over at Lorath's body. This will really piss Zarix off. He's smiling. From the back of the bridge, a feeble voice asks, "Was that the signal?" Will laughs. "It sure was, pal." He walks over to his command chair and presses a button. "Gabe?" He looks down at the main controls and frowns. Maxim leans down and helps Bennie up. "You were very fierce. Well done." Over the speakers in the ceiling comes Will's voice. "Gabe?" One of the Braylac engineers is laying in a heap near the reactor. The other two are still firmly attached to Gabe, who is spinning in circles as fast as he can while trying to grasp the fast-moving attackers. His left arm is shooting sparks out of the elbow joint, while a section of his back plating is hanging loose. "Go for its legs!" one of the attackers shouts. As the Braylac clings to his back, dodging a swipe, it aims its plasma welder at his hip joint. Gabe lurches to one side, stopping his spinning just long enough to collide with one of the workbenches, which sends the hip-attacking Braylac tumbling away. With a kick that would dent whole plating, Gabe sends his small nemesis sailing through the compartment to smack against the far bulkhead, making a wet-sounding noise. "Gabe, you there, buddy?" Gabe looks up at the ceiling, and as the final Braylac moves to his back, out of reach of both arms, he straightens and falls backwards, crushing the small alien underneath him. It makes a gurgling noise as the droid rolls over, stands, and walks to the control panel on the workbench. "Engineering is secure, Captain." Gabe looks down at his arm, still erupting in sparks. 3 hostiles, no longer a concern. "Good job! Get the computer back under control and get the wireless network back up and running so we can use our wrist comms. I'm pretty sure we're flying blind." "Right away."
"What the where's going on over there?"
Zarix and Jarilla are looking at the massive display at the front of the Berserker's bridge. The warlord turns to Zarix, her face making it clear she expects an answer.
"I believe I had told you that Will and the crew of the Ghost were, how did I put it? Wild cards."
He shrugs.
"I'm sure it's fine. Lorath is over there, and I've seen her lead teams to pacify entire villages and not blink. The crew of the Ghost will not be a problem." "Then why are they flying out of the engagement area? They're on a direct course towards—"
And Jarilla leans over the shoulder of one of her crew, looking at the hapless crew member's display.
"Nowhere. They're flying at almost sublight speed, to nowhere in particular."
Zarix snaps his fingers at one of the crew at a station a few meters away.
"You there, keep trying to hail the Ghost."
After glancing at the Duchess, the crew member nods.
"Of course, sir."
Zarix comes back over and bows slightly.
"I'm sure everything is under control over there. Lorath is my top operative, remember?"
The Duchess looks Zarix up and down.
"It had better be. We aren't done here, and I'm not convinced that there won't be more attacks."
Operation Take Back the Ship, Phase 4. Inside a cavity, because room doesn't quite cut it as a description. That's at least 30 meters in each direction. The 2 women are standing over several bodies.
"Did you have to kill them all?"
Zephyr kicks one of the salvagers' bodies.
"Former assassin, remember?"
The feline-featured killer smiles.
"Plus, we didn't need them for anything, did we?"
Leaning back to search the body, Zephyr says.
"Besides information, no."
She pats a few pocks.
"Anything on that one?" "Nope. Wait."
Cynthia unzips the jumpsuit the 4-legged alien is wearing, reaching down inside the lower half.
"Really?"
Cynthia tuts as she reaches inside and withdraws a data card. She turns to Zephyr and winks, then inserts the card in the slot on her wrist comm. She looks at it for a moment, then looks up and turns her head this way and that, before settling on something at the far end of the space they're in. Pointing, she says,
"That's it."
The space they are in is roughly square-shaped. There isn't a hard angle anywhere, and there are several ridges and protrusions fanning out from something that's near the far wall, where the bow of the ship creature would be. The salvagers have set up basic consoles around the room. Navigation, flight controls, comms.
"You're sure?"
Zephyr starts toward the oddly shaped mass. It's ridged and pulses slightly with a rhythm similar to breathing. There are massive organic-looking conduits connected to the structure. Several are severed or in a state of being severed, the wiring for the consoles spliced into them.
Not even remotely, but that guy's data card says that is the brain, or at least part of it.
Shrugging, Zephyr walks up to the large mass. It smells a little like grum, malty and earthy at the same time.
Will would be retching right now,
she says, as she reaches out to touch it.
Is that a...
Cynthia starts. Then Zephyr can't hear her. Her vision swims, and then everything is black.
Please. Please what?
Stop.
I don't understand. Are you in my head? Am I in yours? Well, I guess technically I...
Pain.
We're not with those that were harming you. They can't hurt you now. What are you?
Gomtu.
Is that your name or your species?
I am Gomtu. We are the children.
Do you know where you are? What's been happening to the others?
Dead, but not dead.
Yes, many of them are. Those we came with are harming them.
Why?
I'm afraid your species has a unique quality. Your bodies are essentially starships. Those others want to use you as cargo vessels and ships of war.
War? No.
Cynthia's wristcom crackles with static, then goes silent. She looks down, waiting for it to do something more. When it doesn't, she shifts her arm. Will? She's standing next to the seemingly inert Zephyr, who's standing ramrod straight, hand resting on the slowly pulsing mass.
The wristcom crackles again. Go ahead, you guys okay?
Sort of. Something is happening with Zephyr.
What happened? Maxim cuts in.
She touched what we think is the brain of the behemoth we're aboard. She hasn't moved since, and her lips are moving, like she's talking or mumbling to someone.
We're working on getting the ghost back under control, but at the moment you're on your own. We're under thrust, flying blind. Comms just came back, Will says.
Seems dangerous.
Very. The strain is evident in his voice.
Then I'll figure it out. Get back here fast. But be careful, though. Don't forget Follick's soul is out there. Zarix may not open fire on you with Lorath aboard, but I wouldn't stake my life on that.
Yeah, that's kinda moot anyhow. Will's voice trails off. Stay safe. We'll be back as soon as humanly possible.
That's a low bar,
the Tigran says, tapping the wristcom to close the connection. She looks around the room. Big brain-like thing, Zephyr, a bunch of dead aliens and heavy equipment. Shrugging, she walks over to the nearest body.
Inventory time, I guess.
We do not want to fight.
No one does. Why are you all here? Why are you drifting dormant?
Hibernation. My kind spend thousands of cycles roaming the galaxy, but then must spend time in a state of hibernation. It replenishes us.
It made you a target this time.
Help us.
How?
Wake the others.